Okay, so this first week of April, is when I found out that I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes 7 years ago. So I thought that I would share my diabetic journey with the world today and how I got diagnosed and a little bit of awareness about what type 1 diabetes is. So this video is really going to be split into 3 parts, and first I'll be telling you a little bit more about how I got diagnosed, what are some reasons I got diagnosed, and the difference between type 1 and type 2. Then I'll talk a little bit about the weeks that ensued after getting diagnosed, the transitioning process, as well as the different types of insulin that I was being put on and how my body reacted with all those things. And then lastly, I'll just be talking about how I'm currently doing and what I'm doing right now. So feel free to jump ahead in this video if some of the things aren't really relevant to you, because I'll be having the timestamps in the description below. So just feel free to jump ahead or go back as needed. The one thing that I want to get straight is that type 1 diabetes does not run in my family, and so it's not genetic. No one on either my mother's or my father's side has this autoimmune disorder, and I'm the only one who has type 1 diabetes. So the most reasonable way that I could have been diagnosed with diabetes is via this theory that's called like the environmental trigger theory, which basically just states that your body undergoes a vast amount of stress, and when it does, it induces symptoms of a disorder by altering genes on a chromosome. So in 2014, the year that I got diagnosed, I was in 5th grade, and I remember that my family took a trip to Hawaii, and on our stay, I was swimming in this ocean, but I went near this terrain that was like completely dark. I wasn't sure what was there. And so when I was walking towards darker rocks, I suddenly felt something lash out at my 3rd toe. And there was a lot of pain. I remember screaming that a crab bit me or some type of fish bit me or something along those lines. I remember that I literally bleached or dyed portions of the sand there red because of how much blood I was losing after I got out of the water. And so I wasn't aware about what bit me then, but when we talked to a park ranger there, he described that like the marks on my toes based on striking, I guess, it was exactly the way an eel would bite. And so he said that basically the eel probably mistook my toes as little fish, and so he lashed out at one of my toes. On top of that, I received like 10 stitches, went on antibiotics, and this was the stressor for my body. There was probably some genetic predisposition too in my body, but that environmental trigger offset that chromosome that coded for my immune system to not attack my own body cells. So what usually happens is your killer T's, which are part of your immune system, those are always fighting some type of foreign cells, bacteria, anything that isn't part of your body. And occasionally what will happen is they'll actually attack your own body cells, but there's a gene on your chromosome that actually helps to regulate that. However, for me, mine went a little bit haywire because of my environmental trigger. And so what my killer T's instead did, they attacked the beta cells that are located in my pancreas. And those beta cells are the same cells that are able to produce insulin. And therefore, I got diabetes. Now, this is just a theory, but it's a very plausible theory because diabetes doesn't run in my family at all. Okay, so with that out of the way, let me talk to you about how I found out I had diabetes. I had no prior knowledge about the symptoms of diabetes because I didn't really know what diabetes was in grade 5. I was really fortunate though that my grade 3 teacher was type 1 diabetic, and she actually described a lot of things, and she always tried to spread a lot of awareness about diabetes, especially type 1, and debugging some of the myths about it. Obviously, I was in grade 3 and it was 2 years since I've been in her class, and so a lot of the things that she described, I forgot. After about 1.5-ish months, after getting my stitches removed from that eel bite, I noticed that I was really, really ill. I felt super sick, thirsty, I was urinating a lot, and I lost a lot of weight too. When I talked to my mom about this, because she remembers a lot more about this period of time, she added that I also experienced a lot of hair loss, which kind of makes sense because hair follicles are always growing and going under cell division. And so without the sugar and the energy, these huge amounts of strands will just fall out and no more could grow either. These are some of the symptoms that I experience and are associated with hyperglycemia, which is high blood sugar levels. This is because newly diagnosed individuals with diabetes don't really understand how much they need to eat. They have no idea about carb counting or insulin to carb ratios. And so diabetes is really just starving your body in the face of plenty, right? This is why diabetes is called that. It's a disease that starves in the face of plenty. Without insulin, vast amounts of glucose just circulate in your bloodstream and aren't even being able to be used up by your cells. One of the analogies that a lot of doctors and endocrinologists have taught me is think about insulin and glucose like a lock and key. Without the key, which is insulin, my body cells would be locked. They would starve. They wouldn't be able to get that glucose inside of its own cells without insulin unlocking it. So there's tons of glucose flowing around. And so when I got my blood work done after feeling really unwell, my report came in to show that my blood glucose was 13.3 millimoles per liter. Now, my mom even told me this, that one of the doctors that I went to go talk to was just saying that some of my symptoms were just normal. They were not anything to worry about. I would get better in a few days. And so I really waited it off. But if you do, and I cannot emphasize this enough, but if you do feel any of those symptoms of hyperglycemia, please go get your blood work done because it's literally, it could save your life. I got my blood work done, even though that doctor said that I would get better in a few days. I was really, really thankful that I did get it done because my blood sugar levels were really high. They were much higher than they should have been. And just for context, a healthy pancreas should be able to maintain a blood glucose level between 4 and 8 millimoles. And clearly, I was way above that. So for someone who doesn't have diabetes, a workout or sports can bring your blood glucose level down to about like 4.2, 4.8, 5-ish. And after eating breakfast, lunch, dinner, a heavy snack, or any type of meal, it can raise it up to the higher end, like 7.7, 7.9, 8.1-ish. But regardless, it'll always stay within that range, within 4 to 8. For me, clearly, I was much higher than that. I wasn't able to even get up. I was feeling very lethargic, super duper tired. And I remember this so well because my sister was having her birthday party that week. She was so mad at me because I wasn't participating. I wasn't able to take any photos because I just felt so drowsy, so dead, honestly, and I really did not care about anything or anyone around me. Wasn't able to eat the cake or the pizza, and it was just so hectic for me. Recap: if you feel any of the high blood glucose symptoms or hyperglycemia symptoms, there's a very likely chance that you might have been diagnosed with diabetes. The symptoms, I will just say them here because I think it's very important to acknowledge them, but the symptoms for hyperglycemia include fatigue, thirst, frequent urination, heavy eyes or blurred vision, dry mouth, mood swings, and a lot more symptoms. So some of these symptoms might be normal, like dry mouth might just be a symptom that you have from not drinking enough water, right? If you're regularly feeling these symptoms on a daily basis, definitely get your blood work done. The opposite, which is hypoglycemia or low blood glucose levels, is less common when you're first getting diagnosed, but it's really important that you check these out too, because if you're an athlete or if you work out a lot, you can feel symptoms such as dizziness, weakness, feeling really hot, shaking. You feel like you don't have energy, your mouth starts tingling, your tongue starts tingling, you start sweating, you have a loss of concentration, and you also get mood swings as well in both of these cases. For me, I was obviously in the hyperglycemia range, but now, currently, I actually still feel some of these symptoms. I get blurred out vision, I lose my concentration, my mouth tingles, I get shaky when I get low, and a lot of my friends could definitely attest to all of these because they've seen me get low, they've seen me high. Let's pretend we're back in grade 5. I'm recently diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and so immediately I was hospitalized. But before I talk about hospitalization, I want to say that I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and not type 2 diabetes. And there is a difference. There's a lot of people who have this misconception that because I ate too much sugar as a kid, or because I drank too much pop as a kid, or I didn't get enough exercise, I have this coined term diabetes. And that's not true because I am a full year athlete. I eat very healthy. But at that point, people were really shocked to find out that I got diabetes because, like I said, I'm a pretty fit person. And so they get super surprised, super shocked. And I just like to take a second to really make people more aware of that difference. Type 1 diabetes occurs in an individual when their body is unable to produce any more insulin because their immune system has attacked their beta cells, which produce insulin in their pancreas. This has nothing to do with how much someone eats or how little they exercise, but it's mostly caused by some type of genetic predisposition, like I mentioned before, offsetting the mechanisms that your body has for your killer T's to not attack your own body cells. Whereas in type 2, it can be genetic, of course, but it's more when your body still produces insulin, but your immune system has not attacked your pancreas. Instead, your body has become numb or resistant to the insulin hormone. And so this can be genetic, but it's also influenced by an unhealthy lifestyle, unhealthy eating habits, or the lack of exercise. Okay, cool. So after I got diagnosed with diabetes, I was immediately hospitalized at our local hospital. And I was in the extensive care unit for a short period of time. And I was very, very fortunate that I didn't develop ketone acidosis or severe ketone acidosis, which is the result of continuous high blood glucose levels. And this is why I really do encourage you that if you are feeling any symptoms, please go get your blood work done because ketone acidosis is really, really dangerous to your health and it can result in death. When your body is starved of carbohydrates and glucose, what it'll do is it will break down fats in your body. And when it breaks down fats, it leads to the byproduct being produced, and that's your ketone. And what happens with these ketones is they circulate in your blood and they make your blood more acidic. And having acidic blood is incredibly dangerous for you. You can die from that. I was really fortunate to not be diagnosed with severe ketone acidosis, but I know people who have been hospitalized for it. And it's just because you aren't able to manage that hyperglycemia level efficiently. If you want to flush out ketones and you're not sure if you have them or not, drinking water and going to the bathroom definitely helps flush them out from your system because your liver and your kidneys are going to be working on overdrive trying to get those compounds out of your body. So the more water you drink and the more you urinate, the better it is. But once again, if you are feeling like you're really thirsty or need to be going to the bathroom a lot, blood work. At that local hospital, I spent about a week there and I had to regain my health, of course, but I also had to be monitored so many times. I had to monitor my blood glucose and we had checkings like 4 to 6 times a day, and I would have to wake up, 12 a.m., 3 a.m., and follow a very strict schedule. I had to be able to cope with the amount of needles and syringes that I was being given. After that, I was starting to become a little bit more aware about the fact that I'm sick, and these continuous monitoring processes are just part of this process of rehabilitating. After that, the local hospital here gave me the basic education about taking needles, and I was finally able to go home. So after about a week of staying there, I went home after I had to drive down about 500 kilometers to another endocrinology team in order to get more diabetic education. So at that time, I didn't even know that I was diabetic because I was in such a daze. But after, talking to the doctors there, the nurses, the dietitians, and overall the entire diabetic team and the endocrinology team there. I learned more about diabetes. I had dietitians assign distinct meal plans for me, come up with insulin to carb ratios based on my body, and education about nutrition. I learned about how you can carb count and calories and how you can stay healthy. I also learned to continuously be able to manage my diabetes. It is hard to manage it, of course, but you get equipped with the skill set over this time period while you engage with your doctor to set your basal rates, your bolus rates, or whatever. I really enjoyed that time because I learned a lot more than what some of my peers were learning. And I can definitely say that I'm a healthy, very healthy person now because of my diabetes. It was also one of the most overwhelming times for me though, because there was a lot of following up. There's a lot of reporting back to the diabetic team. There's a lot of traveling for me because I live so far from that team. And it was just a lot of information overload. Like, I had to learn so much stuff. So let me talk to you a little bit about the first types of insulin that I was put on. So the first insulin that I started off with was the Novo Nordisk for my basal and Humalog for my bolus. And I still currently use Humalog for my bolus. During the first few times I was on a syringe, so we would just mix the two into like a mixture and then put it through my arm or other fatty areas on my body. I recently actually looked back at those rates and I noticed that they were a lot lower than they are now, because what I was in during that period was what we call a honeymoon period. And that's when my body was still producing little increments of insulin because my immune system had not completely destroyed all my cells. And so in the beginning, it was very likely that my body was still producing little bits of insulin. If you were recently diagnosed with diabetes as well, it's very likely that you are going to be in this honeymoon period, they call it, just because your immune system has not fully destroyed all of your beta cells. Of course, I'm way out of that phase now, and obviously I rely heavily on external insulin, but I'm not using my pen needles anymore. So throughout this whole process, I was on 3 different treatments. So the first treatment was that syringe and pen needle. The second is what we call the MDI, or the multiple daily injections treatment. And the very last one, which I am currently on, is pump therapy. So in syringe and pen, I only took the Humalog needle twice, and it basically monitored everything throughout the day. That period was insane because it was very, very strict for me. I had less leniency in my eating. I had to be very strict in when I had meals, when I had snacks, how many carbs I had for snacks. So usually it was like 10 carb snacks and 50 carb or 45 carb meals. And I remember going to the doctor and actually fighting for more carbs at dinner, because from an Indian household that eats a lot of carby foods, I remember that I definitely was wanting to eat more in the mornings, more at lunch, more at dinner, but I just wouldn't be able to because of that very strict carb limit that I had for my meals. In the MDI treatment, I used to bolus every time I had a meal or snack. So in this way, I had a little bit more flexibility because I could take insulin based on how much I ate, but it also got me a little bit annoyed because I would have to take a needle every single time I wanted to eat. So during this time, I used Lantus as my basal, and I used Humalog again as my bolus. And every time I had a meal or a snack, I would bolus. But typically, I didn't take any extra Humalog because I didn't want to be taking a needle every single time. So it usually just evened out to 3 times I would bolus for every single meal. So for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then the very last treatment, my pump therapy treatment, is what I'm on right now. And I am currently using the Omnipod as my insulin pump because it gives me a lot of flexibility and a greater degree of control to manage my diabetes. When I have this device on me all the time, I can eat whenever I want. I can manage myself a little bit better. I can give myself correction doses as well. So I think there's a great deal of leniency and flexibility with the pump there. I'll actually make a video about why I chose the Omnipod as well, because I think that's really important to discuss too. Okay, so throughout this video, I haven't really been talking about monitoring my blood sugar level as much, but I used to be using a Bayer glucometer, but then I switched to the Dexcom G5 about 2 years ago, and then I switched again to the Dexcom G6, which I'll also make videos about, but they're continuous glucose monitors, and what happens is they attach onto your skin and they just give you a reading. I am planning to make more videos about why I chose those devices. I will probably also make videos about resources for diabetics transitioning and comparing different types of pumps or different types of pump therapies. But that's it for now, and that is my diabetic journey. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and please give it a like or support my channel by subscribing. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below and I'll get back to them right away. And also don't hesitate to ask any questions about me or my diabetes, or even if you want to seek some advice if you're recently diagnosed. I know that when I talk to other people who are diabetic, it really helped me understand that, oh yeah, although it is hard, it's overwhelming, it makes you a really healthy person after, and I think I wouldn't change that. The diabetes that I've been diagnosed with, type 1 diabetes, I think it really makes me who I am, and I wouldn't change that. So if you do have any questions, I'm more than happy to help out, and thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.